Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
On this Roll for Crit preview, we take a look at Philosophia Floating World. After Philosophia, we are leaving ancient Greece to go over to the Far East in ancient Japan. In order to complete certain objectives to obtain tokens, and depending on which ones you gain, you may need 4 or maybe just 3. That is up to you to decide how you will claim victory.
This is a deck building game, but there is a lot more going on than just simply building your deck. For starters, you are going to draw 6 cards from the top of your own personal deck of cards, but you're not going to be playing them yourself right away. Instead, you hand them to the player to your left, and you're going to receive a set of cards from the player on your other side. You're going to take those cards, choose one of them to discard outright, and then with the remaining 5, you will split them up into 2 piles, one of 3 cards and one of 2 cards. And then you give those cards back to that player. So now that player, and you as well from the player on your other side, you're going to be able to choose from those 2 piles which ones you like better, and that's going to be what you're able to play during your turn during that round. So you might want to try to position it so that some of your opponent's better cards are in the smaller pile so they don't have as many options. A lot of different ways that you can go about it while also hoping that the other player gives you something that you'll be able to use. Once you have your selection of cards in hand, you will start by taking a certain number of rewards. In the bottom left of a card is a green icon, and that will show you what you're going to receive for that turn. It could be a coin, it could be a time token, which are things that you'll be using to take actions later on. It also might be an opportunity to draw more cards from your deck. So that's a way for you to get more cards in your hand without your opponents being able to take advantage of choosing for you. Then once everyone has collected their goods, you go into the actions phase. In the bottom right of your cards, there are red icons, and that is where you will be looking at your possible actions, as well as symbols that are on your personal player board. And everyone is going to be taking these actions simultaneously.
There are many different actions that these cards can provide, and you will choose the order of them. We'll quickly go over them. So starting off with probably one of the easiest ones, moving. Simply move along the dotted lines to a location equal to the number of arrows that it shows. Next up, we have this festival token. You will take this little festival token and put it on the location you're on. There, you can exchange time counters for coins and vice versa to get the resources you need. It also provides protection in that city, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Next, there's these cards up top that you'll have the option to buy. Each card has a money number of coins printed in the corner that you can spend to purchase that card and add to your deck. This is where the deck building comes in. Obviously, they are usually stronger, and they will add some more helpful abilities, or maybe even some of them that are permanently stay out. Then there's also the destroy card action. Sticking with deck building, it's simply removing the card from either your hand or discard pile, so you can try to thin down your deck. Those cards are not the only thing you can buy. There is also a shop in the other side of the board. Here you'll buy either items to defeat monsters or other special effects that may help you out in the long run. If you move to one of these locations that have the dripping blood red circle with the swords crossed, that's a place where you can fight a monster. If you have the right combination of items and tokens, you've defeated the monster, you get a token which brings you one step closer to victory. And then we've got the build action. This is where you'll actually build things on your board, either shrines or the pagoda. They require some number of resources, usually a combination of coin and time counters, and you'll add them to the board. That's important because 2 of the tokens you can capture for victory involve building those structures. Next is the study action that is up here to gain these wisdom cards. They have a cute little poem or some form of knowledge on them, but what's important is the symbol, because 1, those structures I mentioned usually require some of those cards, and 2, if you're able to get 1 of each type, you can trade those in order to further yourselves towards victory. Finally, I'm going to combine 2 actions, that's search and flip location. The reason I'm going to bring these up together is because that in the beginning of the game, there is a token for every location on the board. You're going to shuffle them up and secretly deal 2 to each player. They're going to decide one to be a decoy, the other to be their secret location. It's sort of their home base. And throughout the game, you're going to be searching these locations by using the search action to try to find your opponent's secret location. If you do, not only does that give you a token, but you only need 3 instead of 4 tokens, including the one you just got from that, to win the game. So it's very advantageous. However, should you find their decoy location, that actually unlocks an area for them on their player board and locks up one of yours. So search with care. Once again, this is where the flip location comes into play. The locations that are not chosen are in a pile. If you choose this action, you gain a coin, flip over a location, and everyone now knows that's no one's either secret location or their decoy. So it's a way to narrow down the field, if you will. And going back to that festival, that actually protects people from searching that location. So if anyone goes there, they still can't search because there's too much partying going on and they don't know what's what.
If you're familiar with the original Philosophia game, Dare to Be Wise, which we also had a preview for back when that was up on Kickstarter, this one takes some cues from it, similar style, similar themes, but overall the gameplay feels very different. One thing I think that they both share is the fact that there are multiple potential win conditions, and you can kind of specialize and decide which ones you want to go for. Maybe you want to play the long game and try to get a bunch of these little shrines built, or the pagoda, which will take much longer to build, or you want to go to the shop and hope that you get lucky and you can fight a monster with the items that you received, and there's some really cool, crazy monsters in that deck. Or again, going for your opponent's secret locations, which maybe is risky, but will greatly cut down on what you need to win. So there are a lot of different possible paths that you can choose, and depending on what you're going for, that will determine which of those cards maybe you want to buy and add to your deck.
The deck building aspect is really fun, but what's interesting is because usually you play deck building, you buy the good card and you're like, I can't wait for it to come up again. Problem is, because the way that you divvy out your hand in the beginning, so let's say I bought that one good card, next time it shows up in my hand, Jonathan looks at it, it's just, yeah, I'm going to discard it. You don't get it. So there's a lot more planning you have to do around that. In fact, buying a lot more things so your opponent's forced to still give you something, I think is required then. And I think it adds to some interesting aspects too, because if they know you're going for maybe a building action, the building requirements, you're going to want to make sure you have multiple ways to build, whether that's buying cards or using time tokens, because on your board you have spaces where you can spend a time token to get those extra actions, just in case your opponent's just being real mean and not giving you what you want.
Yeah, you could definitely be on the lookout and say, looks like they really want more money. Well, anytime there's money cards from them, I'm just going to not let them have those. Or I'm going to force them to take it with a much more less optimal card. So you have to decide. So yeah, definitely the long-term plan is you want to get so many good cards that no matter what they give you, you're going to have something that you'll be able to use. Or that's when you really want to make use of the festival. Maybe if you have so much money, you trade it in for those time tokens so that you can use your own board, like you said. There are also advanced sides to your personal character as well as your player board. And if you're utilizing those, then everyone's going to have different possible actions that they can take from the game's start.
This allows for some really weird ways to what you're used to deck building. Certain cards will change in value depending on which character you're playing as. They may become cheaper, more expensive. And of course, like I said, it's not simply just buying and improving your deck. You're going to have to think about how to deal with opponents. And then, of course, playing with more players, there's certain if you give me the good card, I'll give you the good, there's a bit more politics going on when you've got more people at the table with that, which makes it very interesting compared to maybe some other card games out there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we have neglected to mention until this point is the influence track. Again, all of these things that you're doing, everyone is doing them at the same time. There are no traditional turns in the game. So you have this influence track which determines the hierarchy of players. And if there is a conflict, say 2 players want to buy a card and they both want to buy the same one at the same time, then whoever is at the top of that track gets to decide who is going to take priority. And if they choose themselves, then they move to the bottom of the influence track. So it's a choice between, do I want to give this to that player and let them have it maybe because I want to use my influence for something more important later on? Maybe you even want to bluff and try to get someone to give up something for someone else because you really wanted to do a different action instead, but you wanted them to waste their influence on that. So that's a really interesting mechanic that with the simultaneous play and the giving up different piles of cards so you don't necessarily get to choose what you're doing, all those things add up to a very unique experience for the game, I think.
It's not exactly real time where, there's a clock and everyone's frantically doing things, but there is this sort of, you're trying to think of what's the best turn order. Like, do I want to make sure I move after you or not? Do I want to make it because I want the influence tracker to change because that affects ties for other things as well? Or if I take the tie here, then he'll take the tie there. Therefore, I'll get first dibs on the wisdom cards because I really need that Buddha symbol card. It really changes the mindset of how you choose your turn actions, not simply just because what benefits me. It's like, how can I make sure I get the things I want without maybe either A, you getting what I want, or you ruining my plans.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff. There is a variant in there, so you can try it in a more traditional turn-based way if you'd prefer. And I think there's a couple of other kind of variants and expansions that may be available as different goals on the Kickstarter page. You can take a look at it for yourself and see all the finalized components and exactly what other things they have in store for this one. But from initial impressions, I think both of us enjoyed it, I think, a little bit more even than the previous Philosophia game. It's definitely goes in a different direction than a typical deck building game.
We'll have a link down below, of course, to the Kickstarter. Let us know if you're going to back this or if you backed their previous game, just Philosophia of Dare to Be Wise. You can let us know in those comments down below. Until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit preview.
Here's an idea. Support our Patreon or like and subscribe to this channel for more.
Subscribing gives you a +2 to your charisma stat.